Welcome to SQL learning session. Today I'll be going through query null valued rows from database for developers. I have already executed prerequisite SQL for this learning session. In this learning session there are around 8 sections and we'll go through each one of them. Now, let's go through the introduction. The table contains rows with several null values. Run the query below to view it. Now, we'll do exactly the same. We'll run the query to view the rows in the table. Let's see what we get. There are 3 rows in this table and around 6 columns. Nothing equals null. Second section. Null is neither equal to nor not equal to anything. The result is null. The result of null equal to anything is always unknown. So the following query always return no rows. Now let me run this query. It shouldn't return me anything. It doesn't return anything. Now let's run this query. Can you tell me what will it return? Let's see. It doesn't return anything. Why is that? It is because null is not equal to or nor not equal to anything. Because of that, it does not return any rows. Now, moving to section 3 is null condition. To find rows that have null values, use is null condition. This query finds all the rows storing null in a column volume of wood. Let's run this query. Select from choice where volume wood is null. It will select the rows which have null in this column, and there's only one row, Mr. Penguin. Now let's do an exercise where we need to find a row where times lost is null. So there's a column times lost. Times lost is null. That's how we find this. When we run this, what do you think we will get? Let's see. This returns blue brick, the one row where times lost is null. This is null value here. Now, moving to section 4. To do the reverse and find all the rows with non-null values, use is not null. Let's run this query. Select from choice where volume is not null. Volume is not null. These are 2 rows are not equal to null. So that's why this returns this. Null in range comparison. If you want to find choice with a volume of wood less than 15, you can write select from choice volume wood less than 15. Let me run this. Here we have one row where volume of wood is less than 15, but this excludes rows where volume of wood is null. If you want to include those, you must also test for this. Here it is SQL. You must also test for volume is null, and then you will get the rows where volume is null as well. Null functions. Oracle includes many functions to help you handle nulls. NVL and calls are 2 map non-null values functions. NVL functions. We will talk about that first. This takes 2 arguments. The first is null. It returns, then it returns second. Here you go. What do you think will this do? Can you tell me? This will return 4 columns: to name, volume of wood, mapped volume of wood. If the volume of wood is null, it will return 0 for mapped volume of wood. Let's play this. Let's run this and see what we get. Here we have 3 rows. Mr. Penguin has volume of wood is null, and instead of null, map volume of wood is returning 0, and rest are same values. Moving on to Coalesce. This is like NVL, but it can take any number of arguments. It returns first non-value it finds. Now let me run this and see what we get. This query has 4 main parameters. T star returns all the columns. Second, Coalesce 2 has 2 columns. It takes 2 inputs, volume of wood and 0. If volume of wood is null, then it will return 0. Secondly, Coalesce many has 5 inputs: time lost, volume of wood, quantity of stuffing, and 0. If none of prior columns are not null, then it returns 0, and it selects from toys. If you run this, what do you think we will see? Let me show you. Here we have 3 rows, and it is computing. It is doing calculate column for last Coalesce 2 and Coalesce many. Here volume of wood is 0, so that's why it is returning 0, and rest are same for this column. Coalesce many, here time lost is 10, so it is returning 10, no problem. And for column row 2, blue brick, the time loss is null, that's why it is going to volume wood and returning 10 from there. And quantity stuffing, and for third row, time loss is not null, so that's why it is returning 1 from there. You can use these function in where close to map null to real value, so you know it is separate or column in null test. For example, this return the same rows as finally or query is section 5. Let me run this. It is running me these 2 tables, and here I don't need to do separate or condition for null, so this is much easier to write and understand as well. Now we'll be doing some exercise. Here we need to complete the query to find all rows where time loss is less than 5 or null. So time loss is a parameter we need to searching for. Time loss is less than 5. We'll be using Coalesce function here to do our manipulation. Coalesce function here to do our manipulation where time loss is 0. If it is null, it will spit out 0 from this function, and it is less than 5. This query returns blue brick and red brick as expected. We can also write this using NVL function. And it has the same rows. Now, moving to section 8, the magic values. Null complicates your where clause. So, some people tend to use magic value instead of null for missing or non-application information. For example, Mr. Penguin is made of fluff, not wood. So to show volume of wood doesn't apply, you could set this to impossible value of -1. Run the update to do this. Let's run this. Now here we have updated the volume of wood to -1 where it was now. For Mr. Penguin, you can now use standard comparison tool to find all the rows with volume of wood less than 15 or where it does not apply. Now we don't need a separate logic for is null condition. We can use the same logic of where volume of wood is less than 15 to get the rows we want. At first glance, this seems to make your code simpler, but it brings complications elsewhere. For example, say you are analyzing volume of wood used in toys. You want to find the mean, standard deviation, and a minimum value for this. Only blue brick and red brick use wood, but this calculation should be returned 15, 7.07, and 10 respectively. But if you run a query below, you get different result. Now we see that this is kind of impossible value of -1 for Mr. Penguin. To avoid this, you need to check that volume of wood is greater than is equal to 0. We were expecting 15, 7.70, and 10 respectively, but it is not returning that. Why is that? It is not returning the value we expected because it is taking the row where it has -1 in volume of wood. Because of that, our calculation is skewed. Therefore, we need to exclude this row when we do the calculation. Therefore, we need to put a condition here such that we are excluding the row where we have that impossible value. Volume of wood is greater or equal to 0. And then this will give us the correct result. In the end, let me quickly summarize what we learned today. We learned about querying null valued rows. We stated that nothing equals to null. Even null is not equal to null. We talked about different conditions where we can filter for null. One is null condition and one is not null condition. Then we talked about how can we use null or how can we deal with null in range comparison. Then we talked about some solutions for making comparison simpler using null functions such as NVL and CoList, and we use those functions in comparison to make comparison easier. Then we also talked about some magic values where we replace a null with some impossible values which we would not expect in data, and we saw that it will bring the complication somewhere else. So that's all for today. I will see you next learning session. Thank you so much.